Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Mum and Son Run podcast. In this episode, we're talking all things strength training for runners. There's a bit of a common misconception that strength training either hinders running performance or doesn't positively impact running performance, and that's just simply not true. So in this episode, we're going to talk about all the benefits of strength training and how it can impact your running performance and help you take your running to the next level. We hope you enjoy it. Let's get straight into it. Episode 10. We're back, Mum. Things are getting serious. We're in it for the long haul here. We haven't given up. We're still here, whether people want us to be or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. Double figures. Who'd have thought?
Double figures. What a landmark. And how are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. How are you, son?
I am very well. We actually haven't recorded a podcast since the London and Manchester marathons happened. So I thought we'd start off
Yeah.
by touching a little bit on that. I don't think you got to catch too much of the London Marathon because you actually went and watched and cheered on the Manchester runners on a very hot day. So how did that go?
Yeah, it was a hot day. Yeah. I was at mile 17 cheering people on, and both people I knew and obviously many people that I didn't. Yeah, it was incredibly warm and you could see the fatigue because the mile 17 point used to be the mile 21 point. And on that day, it really looked like it was mile 21 for those people. They've
It
changed
felt
the
like it
course around a
probably, yeah.
little. Yeah, we could hear ambulances out on the course. And so it was tough conditions. And having had, friends who I've seen since who ran it, they've said it was, one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult conditions they've run in a marathon. So hats off to everybody and a big well done. It was, as always, great to cheer people on. And I didn't use the words, there's only a part run to go once. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I wouldn't dare if I was you. Yeah,
no.
really difficult conditions. So, and it's really difficult when you've trained for a specific goal to give up on it. Not give up on it, but to adjust it and
Yeah,
accept that because of something out of your control, the thing
yeah,
you were really hoping for and you've worked so hard to get, is slightly further out of reach. It doesn't make it impossible, but you have to be realistic of that the heat and the humidity impacts how hard it feels and how much energy you're using at a specific
yeah,
pace. So it really does make running a marathon so much harder. It makes fueling harder, it makes hydration harder. So to anybody who was out there and completed the marathon, hats off to you because it was really, really difficult
yeah,
conditions.
yeah. Those won't have been the conditions that people trained in. Though they'll have trained through the winter.
Yeah,
And a winter in the UK does not provide any days like Manchester. So it is a real achievement. As always, it's always an achievement to run 26.2 miles, but
yeah.
especially so on a day like that. So yeah, I didn't catch. You caught, I think, lots of London on the BBC.
Yeah, I did. I loved it. And if you'd have told me maybe even 3 or 4 years ago that I would be sat watching the full length of a marathon for the elites, I would have told you that you're lying because the old me couldn't have thought of anything worse because in my head it's just like, well, it's just people running. Like, how much jeopardy can there be? It's not end to end like a basketball game or football. It's left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. But actually, like, it was so entertaining. And there was a point of the race, maybe like 30 kilometers in, I want to say, at an aid station, where the leading group, they were all coming into this aid station, and one of the runners broke off slightly and created a bit of a gap to the pack behind him. And as he went in for his water bottle, he actually faked it, didn't grab his bottle. And as the rest kind of slowed up and got to the table and were reaching for their fluids, he shot off and upped his pace. And I'd never seen anything like it. And it was so interesting to me because this created the jeopardy because it was such a ballsy move, especially on a hot day, that he skipped his carbohydrates and his fluids to break away from the pack. And he really did. In a short space of time, he was gone. And he eventually came home quite comfortably and won the London Marathon. So it was a move that really paid off. It was amazing to see Alex Yee come in maybe like 11th,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
And considering that's not his primary, I know that running is his best out of the free sports, out of swimming
Triathlon,
and
yeah,
cycling and running. But wow, he really beat some of the top elite runners, and
yeah.
I was amazed. And then Kiplimo came in at 2 hours and 3 minutes on his debut marathon, so that's not bad going, is it? Really on your first 2 hours and 3 minutes.
I was going to say we're both big Philly Bowden fans, and to see Philly coming in third Brit was, and I know, talking about races not going to plan, that was one that I think Philly has said didn't go to plan for her. It wasn't, she didn't reach her A goal, but what a great run.
Yeah, I think a lot of the elites weren't completely were hoping for a little bit more, so that just goes to show like the heat impacts everybody. And actually,
Yeah.
to give a shout out, one of the only people I saw thriving in that heat was a friend of mine who I used to run with in Bali, called Josh, and he ran the London Marathon in 2 hours and 29 minutes, which was a huge PB for him, I'm pretty sure. It was incredible. He ran the whole thing pretty much filming it on his phone, which is even more impressive. So he's got this like amazing footage, but maybe just training in that heat in Bali and the humidity in Bali, that 21, 22-degree weather in London
Yeah.
felt like a cool breeze for him, but amazing to see him come in. And I actually think he's still a young lad. I think he's got a really bright future as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
shout out to
phenomenal.
Josh. But this
Yeah.
week's episode is going to be all about strength training and its impacts on running. Hopefully, just giving people an idea of the why and then the what as well, like some exercises to include, how often they should potentially be including strength training in their program. Because, when you're training for a marathon, the running is so dominant, it's so time consuming that it can be quite difficult, and sometimes you feel like you've got no energy to go and do the strength training, but it's just finding a way to fit it into your plan. So my first question for you really was, how has your perception or your relationship with strength training changed since you first started running? I don't know. I think you were doing boot camps and stuff, but maybe not too much running specific work, although some of that will impact and help with injury prevention and performance. But how has your relationship with strength training progressed and grew since you first started running?
Massively. I did boot camps back in the day, really before I did running. That's probably one of the reasons, or one of the ways that I got into running was through people that I knew with boot camp. So I didn't associate what I did at boot camp with running. I didn't do the boot camps because it improved my running, and I didn't do the running vice versa because it improved anything that I did at boot camp. It was just two things that I did that I really enjoyed. It was as simple as that. And I suppose really it's only the last few years as I've become more serious about running and increased mileage that I've started to bond together strength and conditioning with running as a way of kind of improving what I do on my feet. I've very much realised that to keep myself strong is a way of actually dealing with injury, preventing injury, and improving my running performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think a lot of people new to running either don't pair the two or see a correlation between the two, or maybe don't tailor their strength training more towards running related stuff, or just think that running is always the answer for improved running performance. They maybe
Yeah,
don't see that including regular strength training could be the reason they hit a PB. They put it all down to the running. So I would say that
yeah,
that's fairly normal, and only recently, because my background prior to getting into running, I was more of like a weightlifter, bodybuilder style when it came to exercise. But definitely in the last year or so, when I've really, got quite obsessed with improving my running performance, have I deep dived into the things that can ultimately improve performance and prevent injury. So half the battle when it comes to running is staying out there and getting to the start line injury free. And I honestly think that strength training and having a solid foundation of strength is the key when it comes to that. So there's a huge correlation between the two. So obviously you're just coming back from an Achilles injury. So talk to us about what your strength training program looks like at the moment as you start getting back out running again.
So going back to when I first ruptured the Achilles, I pretty quickly realised that there was still things that I could do. Not even when I was non-weight bearing, there were things that I could do. So I had a very small program of non-weight bearing exercises and decided it was a good time to actually focus a little more on perhaps upper body strength. Not particularly for running. At the time, it was probably more a way of keeping myself sane. I think I've said it on the podcast before, to go from running 4 or 5 days a week to just not even being able to walk is a massive, massive blow to, both physically and mentally. So I decided to do some upper body work and some non-weight bearing exercise. So I think that's the first thing I'd say, is that there's always something that you can do, no matter what your injury is. There are bits of your body that are not injured, and as long as you definitely know that you're not impacted on the injured area, actually you can spend some time, building yourself up in other ways. So then I started to work, once I was actually literally back on my feet, I started to work with a physio whose expertise is Achilles injuries, and he has been amazing in building my confidence up to do a strength and conditioning program again, because I don't know, I've never had an injury like this where I felt quite nervous about doing certain things, particularly anything where I had to raise my feet off the floor. So I've been working since February on a recovery program that is designed to, one, build up obviously the strength in my Achilles, in my calf, but also it's designed to help me with my glute strength and hip strength, because somewhere along the line, going back before the injury, there was something going on that, there was a weakness down that side of my body that wasn't just Achilles related. There was pain around the glute area, the hip area, the top of the hamstrings. So, I'm no physio, and I'm not medically qualified, but one thing I do know is my own body, and I do know that any pain that I had in other areas when that Achilles snapped went in an instant. So, bearing that in mind, the physio has given me exercises that actually have built up some strength, or designed to build up some strength in other areas of my body. So that's where I'm at the moment. I'm now back out on a run walk program, which was terrifying on the very first run, but only terrifying for, I think it was more the thinking about it that was terrifying, because actually once I got out there, I quickly realised that, my Achilles wasn't just going to snap because I was running for 30 seconds. I'd done all the groundwork to make sure that it didn't. So yeah, it's been different, because it's not just strength to go alongside the running, it's actually strength to get me back into a position where I actually can go out and run even for 30 seconds.
Yeah. But I imagine that you'll continue to do a lot of those exercises even as the running starts to pick up as well. So
Yeah,
they're rehab, but they're also almost like prehab as well. So you're you're stopping yourself from any injuries down the line as well by strengthening everything up now.
yeah,
But yeah, you mentioned some key areas there that often have issues with runners. Firstly, it's glutes. So the majority of people will experience pain around the knee when it comes to running. But often the issue isn't at the knee. The knee is a slave to the hip and the ankle. So a lot of the time it's dysfunction or weakness of the hips or around the ankles, maybe into the feet as well. We spoke about that in the running shoe episode last week. So it's vital when you are getting into the gym to kind of understand your own body and your own weaknesses to start off with, and then understanding the demands of running and the muscles that take the most load and areas to focus on when it comes to building your plan to support your running. So The key areas for me would be building up strong glutes, building up strong quads, hamstrings, calves, anything that kind of stabilizes the knee. Your calf is one of the key players when it comes to running. It takes a huge amount of impact. So making sure you are including calf work, maybe a seated calf raise, it could be a standing calf raise, single leg calf raise, including lots of single leg work. As you know, running is kind of a single leg activity. You're hopping from one leg to the other continuously. So exercises like walking lunges, split squats, that type of thing can be really useful. That doesn't mean that bilateral, meaning using both legs at the same time, exercises aren't important and really beneficial as well, but it's good to have a good mix of those. So also including some hinge exercises, so basically where you hinge at the hips. So this will be a deadlift, so it could be a trap bar deadlift, it could be a conventional deadlift, it could be a stiff leg deadlift, so you're getting more load through the hamstrings. Where you'll need to work on is completely kind of individual to you, so it is about knowing your own strengths and weaknesses. I know that I've got really weak glutes or underactive glutes. They just don't really want to get into the party. They're a bit lazy. They need waking up a little bit before I go out and run. And they have caused any issues that I've had injury wise. My IT band issue was glute weakness. So I make sure that glute exercises are consistent throughout my program. I also make sure that towards the start of my training as well, so I'm performing them when I've got loads of energy, rather than just throwing in some glute bridges towards the end of my session when I'm knackered and my focus has started to dwindle a little bit. So I would suggest kind of knowing your own strengths and weaknesses and then working around those. So in terms of how often, I guess this is individual as well. Like how often were you including strength training around your running mum during your last kind of marathon prep?
So I did 2 sessions a week. Those sessions generally were 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So, that they're not, yes, you've got to find the time to fit those in. And the way I liked to do it was I liked to keep rest days as rest days. So I did my strength and conditioning on a running day, and I always did the run first. So that was the priority. Other than warm up or drills and strides that happened during the run, the actual strength and conditioning sessions were done afterwards. And yeah, it can be tough to fit those in, but the difference that I saw, the condition that I started out on got to the start line at Rome compared to how I got to the start line at Manchester was like night and day. And strength and conditioning was one of the key reasons that I rocked upon that start line in such a good condition. And that's not to say that I didn't have niggles along the way to deal with, because I did, but I was in such better form than I was for Manchester. And that included the minute I've kind of stepped over the finish line as well. The difference in my form in that last 10K, as marathon runners know, the last 10K of a marathon is when the race really begins. And,
Mm.
in other marathons, that's when I'd start to fold in on myself, etc. At Rome, totally different. So those 2 sessions every week, fitting those in on a running day, yes, difficult, but if you want something enough, you'll find the time. We all find
Mhm.
masses of time to scroll through phones and watch TV and whatever it is that perhaps isn't productive time as such for ourselves. But I made sure that those sessions were a priority, and it totally revolutionised really the marathon. And I know that's a big word to use, both long and kind of big in its meaning, but it absolutely was a key factor.
Yeah, it really is. And I think you're completely right that towards the end of a marathon, like this is when form usually starts to break down. So you'll find yourself maybe rounding your shoulders, you'll find your body tightening up, you'll find that every stride feels harder and harder. I honestly
Yeah.
think that strength training can be a savior towards those final miles. And I don't mean make it feel completely easy, but it can just help you to keep that solid form to make sure that your legs are capable and have the muscular endurance to carry you to that finish line. So I completely agree. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, something that's, a 2 hour session done 4 or 5 times a week. It can be 2 or 3 sessions, and it could be 20 to 30 minutes of like dedicated, focused work. If you program it right, maybe you can include supersets as well. So exercises back to back with, no rest in between, and then you take a bit longer rest afterwards. That can be a good way of fitting more into less time. And I think it can be in your front room, it can be in the gym if you want. It's finding whatever fits within your lifestyle and just making the most of it. It could be if you've got a 10-minute slot, between picking your kids up, you do some bodyweight squats, you do some reverse lunges, you could do some core work as well. You don't even necessarily need weights or the gym to do these things, and they have such a big impact.
I can remember doing calf raises, not since I've done my Achilles. I do those at a specific time, but back pre-Achilles injury, I'd do them while I was brushing my teeth, either in the morning or in the evening, or sometimes both, and it's a great way just to fit a little exercise in whilst you're doing something else, or while you're waiting for the microwave to do your porridge for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You could be doing some squats or a couple of lunges, and it's a good way to start actually thinking about strength and conditioning as part of your running activity.
Yeah, you spot on. And that's actually, there's a name for that. It's called habit stacking. And it's a
Oh, is
really
it?
useful way of building a new habit
Right.
is by placing it on top of a habit that you already perform consistently. So
Yeah.
brushing your teeth, for example, I would hope that anybody listening brushes their teeth a couple of times a day. And that can be a good example of like how to stack something on top of that. So you might take your supplements just before you brush your teeth or something like that, or
Yeah.
when you put the kettle on, maybe you do a plank or you do some squats like you said.
Yeah.
If you haven't read it already, there's a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and that's one of the techniques that he mentioned. So that's a really good point. The other point that you made that I really like is to keep your hard days hard and keep your easy days easy. It's not
Yeah.
possible for everybody to, go for a run in the morning and then leave enough time and then go to the gym at night. I understand like sometimes just marathon training, just getting the running done is, plenty within a busy work life, a busy social life, and having kids and a family and the other stresses of life. But if you can keep in so if you do a speed work session and then you do a training session later on, a strength session, that's a great way of making your hard days hard and then your easy day. So the next day you might do a recovery run and then you get the rest of the day to relax. And then you make sure that, so say for example, the day before a speedwork session, you do like a heavy strength session. The impact of that might decrease the intensity and your performance levels during your speedwork session. So in an ideal world, if we're talking optimal, and I know what's optimal isn't always what's practical, you keep your hard days hard so that you can recover properly on your easy days and keep the intensity of your hard runs as high as possible. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was plyometrics. So this is something that recently has become very popular, especially in the running world. And this is more explosive movements. Again, this is something that you can do in your back garden, in your house, and has been shown to really improve agility, power, and really feed into running performance. So this could be things like pogo jumps or drop jumps. Box jumps are a good example of plyometrics. So, maybe you've got a step that you could jump up onto in the garden, and plyometrics can be a really useful thing to add into your strength training sessions, probably at the end after you've done more of your heavy lifting, and can just help to kind of round your training sessions off, but are really, really useful.
Yeah, well, and that's something that the physio's just added in for me into my program over the last few weeks. So some of those very things, and we're just starting to get into explosive movements now. And the other thing as well is that if you know, some of the calf raise stuff I've done in the pool. So that was a really good tip that I would never have thought of, that the physio gave me. So with calf raises, you can you can do so much more if you are, what he said was, anything other than sorry, anything above waist height in water, you are basically weightless. So if you have got a
Mm,
niggle or an injury and you've been given calf raises, if you do them in the pool, you'll be able to do single leg where perhaps you would only be able to do double leg if you weren't in water. So I've found that really useful. So whenever I'm at the gym, and I do a mix, you know, I'm out in the garden if the weather's good enough, that's where I do my sessions. I'm in the garage if not, not quite as enjoyable. But
no.
sometimes on some days, that's what you need. You're at home and you think, yeah, now's a good time. I've got half an hour, I can do that. Whereas the gym is takes much more kind of preparation, but it does have its benefits. The pool being one of them, the variety of equipment being the other. But you don't need much at home, do you? For as we proved during lockdown, with one or two kind of small weights and resistance bands and a mat and a couple of kettlebells, you know, you can quite easily give yourself a good workout.
Yeah, 100%. And with supplementing your running training, it's having some heavy work in there, like lower rep stuff is a good idea. But there's definitely benefits to some of the higher rep and lighter stuff as well, for definitely for injury prevention and just for that muscular endurance that you need for long distance running. So if you're talking yourself out of it thinking, well, if I just do some bodyweight squats and some bodyweight lunges and a few crunches, that's not going to, impact my running performance. It really will. And it doesn't have to be an hour. It can be 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you can dedicate to it, and something will always be better than nothing. And then it's not neglecting your upper body. Upper body is important, being able to hold a good posture as well, but a lot of your work should be focused around your calves and quads and glutes and hamstrings, and then some core in there as well, because your core has to keep you upright the whole time, and can a weak core towards the end of a race can really lead to that breakdown in posture as well. And that's like when you become less efficient, it will have a huge impact on your running performance.
And what is it about strength and conditioning that actually improves your performance and your running economy? I mean, why is it that just running along, and why is that not just enough to improve what you do?
Well, firstly, it's the simple one is that it just improves the strength of your muscles, so you can hold your technique and your posture better and longer. The other is kind of the connection between your mind and your muscles. It creates stronger kind of neural pathways, and this can lead to better running economy as well. And for anyone that doesn't know, running economy is basically like the amount of energy you'll use at a certain speed. So, say for example, you had two runners and they're both running 8-minute miles. One might be using a lot of energy, and the other one might be super efficient and be really, really comfortable at that speed, and doesn't burn through their fuel as quickly. And that is obviously the more preferable runner to be. So improving running economy through things like strength training and running itself improves running economy is key to being a efficient and fast runner.
Do you think you need to lift? So going back to the sessions that you do, is it better to lift weights during the sessions, or is that not necessary? Is that, because obviously lots of people equate lifting weights with adding muscle, and additional weight is not something that runners are particularly keen on, because obviously you've got to carry that weight for as many miles as you're running. So
Yeah, I
what's
think
your
it's a
view on
mix.
weights?
I think that if you can get into a gym and lift heavy, then that is the most beneficial when it comes to performance outcomes. So it's kind of been shown now that that lower rep, so even like 6 to 12 rep range, maybe even lower, and definitely higher in some circumstances as well. But somewhere between that 6 to 12 reps, taking your sets reasonably close to failure, that is what leads to the best performance outcomes. So if you can get into a gym and lift heavy for at least, some of your exercises, it's a really good idea. And then supplementing that with some lower rep, um, lighter weight as well. So maybe you're in the 12 to 15 rep range, maybe even going up to 20 reps. That can be beneficial as well. So it's really about having a balance. But if I was talking optimal, I would be in the gym. I would be building up a fairly strong deadlift. I would be working on some kind of squat movement and getting pretty strong at that as well. I would be building up my hamstrings. Maybe you're doing like a seated leg curl or a lying leg curl or deadlift as well, which can build glutes and hamstrings. I would definitely be focusing on strong glute strength and the glute medius as well. So throwing in some hip abductor work. So that machine that guys are scared to go on in the gym where you kind of sit on it and then you push your legs out like this. Girls love it, but guys are scared of it. That's really good for building up your glute medius, which is great for kind of hip stability and then stabilizing the knee as a result. So it really is individual what is the right thing for you, but a mixture of strength, a mixture of lightweight stuff, then with some more explosive stuff, some plyometrics. That is my suggestion. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up nicely. So it's really about just finding what works for you, whether it be one session a week for 15 minutes, that's better than nothing. But it's finding what works for you, what fits within your lifestyle. It's finding your weaknesses and what you should be focusing on within your sessions and finding a way to make that work alongside your running and your lifestyle. So hopefully this has helped. If you've enjoyed this episode, hit 5 stars, give it a like, leave a comment, all of that good stuff. And we will catch you in the next one. Goodbye, Mum.
Bye, Sam.